The lifeless body of an amateur boxer is found in the middle of nowhere.
He'd been beaten, bound, and left.
Coroner says manual strangulation.
He doesn't just want him to die, he wants to feel him die.
The investigation stalls until a surprise witness steps forward.
She thought she was going to be implicated in a murder.
We need something to support what this woman says.
To get to the truth, detectives will need to get their hands dirty.
I said, I think you're going dumpster diving.
Sometimes you have to do nasty things to solve a crime.
When you begin a murder investigation, you're poking in the dark. But once you actually get to a point of getting solid information, the sun comes out. That's a great moment.
Douglas Wagner was out enjoying the beautiful weather about 15 miles north of Colorado Springs in El Paso County. I think a lot of people live here because we have such great weather most of the time. It's almost characteristic in Colorado for people to be outdoorsy. He started smelling something funny. And kind of buried loosely under some branches. And he sees a dead body.
The next day, Sergeant Joe Kenda meets with Detective Steve Gansel of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
So how's this new sheriff of yours? I like him. Shaking things up, but in a good way.
I often meet with other detectives from other agencies, particularly El Paso County. We often work together on cases of common interest or cases that cross jurisdictional lines.
Here you guys go.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have been craving meatloaf like you wouldn't believe.
I absolutely love having lunch with Joe and to sit over and talk about what we have going in the sheriff's office.
So what's this new case you're working on? The guy went hiking in the woods and found himself a dead body. Wow. Looks bad.
My appetite has never been spoiled. You get very accustomed to dealing with death. That's what we do. It doesn't interfere with lunch, dinner, or anything else. It just doesn't. On one occasion, we ordered pizza. We had it delivered to the crime scene.
Happened in our jurisdiction, just outside of Woodmore, but we could use some of your help. Sure. So what do you know so far?
Gansel explains the body was located in a remote, wooded area.
The victim appears to be a black male. He's early to mid-20s. He's very well built, maybe a bodybuilder or athlete of some sort.
It was apparent that there was some effort to conceal the body.
All right, let's get this stuff off him.
Once all the debris was moved, the body was rolled over.
Oh, damn.
He is bound, both his wrists and his feet, with shoelaces. Not bound very tightly, but bound nonetheless. There are drag marks where this body is found. So this person is transported to that disposal site, most likely by automobile. The body is removed from the car, dragged to where it's left, and then covered up.
He's got no wallet on him.
Somebody really took their time with this guy.
Yeah, this is a targeted kill.
It was very apparent that the victim had been beaten severely about the face. Inside the mouth was material from some type of a jacket.
So was he beaten to death? Nope. Coroner says manual strangulation. Interesting. I thought so.
Manual strangulation says they know this person, and this person is enraged. He doesn't just want him to die, he wants to feel him die.
Coroner gives his time of death anywhere from 2 to 7 days ago. Other than that, I got nothing. So how can I help? I'd like to figure out who this guy is, run his fingerprints. I was hoping maybe you could ask around, see if anybody matching his description what reported missing around then. Consider it done. Here's the rest of the case report.
The most complete records of people and criminals and so on are maintained by the Colorado Springs Police Department. So we very often share information with the Sheriff's Department.
If we don't find anything in our files, so reach out to the media.
I really appreciate that, Joe.
Whenever you're ready, guys.
Thank you. This one's on me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That afternoon, detectives review every missing persons report from the past month.
Since there is no identification on the remains, no documents of any kind, I'm checking to find someone who's of same physical appearance as this guy. Black male, probably in his 20s, 5'7" to 5'8", 150 pounds, athletic build.
Yeah, nothing here. How about you?
Nothing.
All right, let's try Crime Stoppers. Yeah, can you please put me through to KKTV?
In 1988, I was a news anchor for KKTV, the CBS affiliate in Colorado Springs. Back then, the only way the police department had to get out information to the public was through the news media and Crime Stoppers.
If you see any suspicious activity, please call us at Crime Stoppers.
Crime Stoppers is an organization within the city and county that maintains informant files for individuals who call the police and report intelligence information they've gathered from the street.
Crime Stoppers at this particular time was sort of a new and exciting thing that the news media was getting involved in. We had a specific Crime Stopper line that many times on a newscast, we would promote it and say, this is who they're looking for tonight, call this number. We might give a little synopsis of the crime.
After the robber left the Safeway store, witnesses saw him get into a vehicle and drive westbound on Colorado. The car was described as a Chevrolet Impala four-door, late 60s to early 70s, with a white roof and light green body. The car also had a Colorado temporary sticker attached to the rear window.
It was way before crime shows or things like that. This was a way for really the first time for the public to really get involved in a new media kind of sense and be able to call in and feel like they could be part of solving a crime. And for some people, it might have been because there was a reward offered in some cases. Other times it might be just because they wanted to do the right thing to help their community. And sometimes people get involved in Crime Stoppers, or at that time maybe, was because it made you feel, a little important, or, people want to get involved, whether they really had legitimate tips or maybe they thought they did or whatever. Because it was such a new thing then, people wanted to participate.
There's one particular informant who often would call to report that it all came to him in a dream. Oh, really? How useful that would be.
And then there are unfortunately, people who want to throw police maybe off the course or just want to play games or whatever. And so they might call in fake leads.
It's good and bad news. You get rumors. I know a guy who knows a guy who heard a guy say, the ultimate hearsay, that sort of thing. Because you still have that draw of financial award. They're going to come forward with anything if they think it'll lead them to a few bucks.
The suspect in this case is described as a black male, 29 to 30 years of age, 6 foot 2 inches tall with a thin mustache and a very muscular build.
If you have information, call Crime Stoppers. 634-STOP in Colorado Springs, 542-STOP in Pueblo.
So it's the unfortunate reality of the modern day that the police are forced to deal with some unsavory characters who can provide useful information. They're not named, they're provided with an identifying number, and they provide information that may or may not be extremely useful in criminal investigations. They're usually petty criminals, but they in fact are criminals. That's how they know what's happening. They know other criminals. And they listen to the activities on the street. They know what's going on. They know who has a gun. They know who's bragging about something they committed. They know all these things because they associate with them. So the point is, by making them anonymous, they're at no risk from their associates as being labeled as a police informant, because they're only known by a number. Their number only appears in the case report, so even the defense cannot provide the identity of the informant to the accused.
Please call us at Crime Stoppers. We need your help to stop these crimes.
Over the next 2 days, calls about Detective Gansel's John Doe begin to trickle in.
Good morning, Sergeant. Hot off the press.
Thank you.
I get Crime Stopper tips every morning, and I review those. The problem is a lot of Crime Stopper tips aren't useful. But we get one informant that calls in that says she knows this guy, and his name is Doc. The last time she saw him was this date, and he looks like this. That lines up with our unknown victim. So we referred that to Genzel right away.
This is Genzel.
Hey, Steve, it's Kenda.
You may want to talk to this person.
Hours later, the caller meets investigators at the morgue.
Are you sure you're okay to do this?
The visual identification is one of the least chosen ways in law enforcement to identify a body. There is a high degree of anxiety, not knowing if in fact it is going to be the person they know. And that's going to be that everlasting view that'll never go away.
You ready?
Yeah.
Please.
Oh my God.
She yells out, "Oh my God, that's my friend Doc."
There's nothing worse than watching a loved one identify a body, but it must be done. Now we need to find out who this Doc is and why he ended up on a morgue table.
He's a violent criminal and is highly dangerous.
Now he's on the run in Mexico. When you're a fugitive, you can't ever let your guard down.
Gringo hunters.
Seems like they're ready for anything. They're going in, they're going in. Oh my, they're going in.
He could be armed. It's super risky.
Don't move, get out of the car.
What made you decide to come across the border?
Nobody want to be in jail.
If you're a criminal thinking about hiding out in Mexico, I think twice, because these guys are on the hunt.
Way in a maniacal rage.
You've agreed to sit with me for an hour and truthfully answer my questions?
Okay.
I don't like hurting people. You don't?
No.
Because the person that you murdered in your home, she didn't walk out of your home. If you were me, would you believe you?
You. You know, Paso County Sheriff's Department not only had a whodunit, they had a who is it. We now have a witness who's come forward that says his name is Doc. So it is a beginning for the case.
So you don't know Doc's real name?
No, I haven't known him that long. Maybe a month.
How do you know him? Look, you can be honest with me. All I care about is catching whoever it is did this to your friend.
Okay, I scored H from him a couple times. And then we started hanging out.
She described Doc as coming from New York, that he had been in Colorado Springs a short time and was a street-level drug dealer. She had purchased heroin from him.
That's what got him in trouble. Something happened with the guys that he got the drugs from.
How do you know that?
The weirdest thing happened right before he disappeared.
She said she was minding her own business.
Where's Doc?
I don't know. I haven't seen him all day.
She was absolutely terrified of these two men.
So they drove off. And then a couple days later, I saw them at the bar. And they said, don't worry about looking for Doc. Took care of it.
Do you know any of their names?
No. All I know is they supply most of the dealers in the area. And I heard that they have connections to a Panamanian cartel.
It, of course, is entirely possible that he has crossed swords with these Panamanian drug dealers, and they took revenge by killing him. If you're in the drug business, they might even make a mistake and believe that you owe money that you don't owe. It's a very bizarre world, which is why it's not in your interest to become involved in it.
Look, here's my card, in case you think of anything else. And again, I'm sorry for your loss.
Later that day, Gansel brings Kenda up to speed.
So maybe Doc owed these guys money. They track him down, beat him up, and ultimately strangle him.
Yeah, that would explain why he was found. Why they interrogated him.
Drug people have a strict code. Don't pay me, you steal my drugs, I'm going to kill you. And they do. They carry out that threat because the only thing they can survive on is their reputation. And if it's drug dealers in the plural, could this explain tying up and torture and punching and who knows?
So we're thinking to connect the Panamanian cartel?
Yep.
Oh, I got this.
Oh, thanks, man.
Keep the change.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Karen.
It isn't long before Gansel and Kenda encounter an unexpected setback.
This is Gansel.
Hi, this is Tina.
The witness called in and stated that she had received a telephone call from Doc. And Doc had informed her that he had left Colorado Springs.
He's in Texas, he's fine. Oh, great.
I'm so sorry. I really thought that the guy you showed me was him.
It's hard to identify a body in that condition.
It doesn't happen often, but it can happen that people see what they want to see.
Did Tina imagine this was her friend Doc because of all of the drugs she has floating around in her system, or is she just lying? Who knows? This is the world of delusions and illusions where drug users dwell. Maybe it's time to find some new friends, Tina.
It's very frustrating that you have a good lead that sounds like you're going to go somewhere, and then the very next day is gone.
Thanks for letting me know.
What's up?
Good news. Just heard back from Quantico. This fax just came in.
So the FBI ran the victim's prints in a national database and got a hit. This person is John Bernard Wilson, known as Johnny. He's 23 years of age.
Through the records, it showed that Johnny Wilson was living with his mother in Denver.
John Wilson?
Is this about Johnny? Did you find him?
Maybe it'd be better if I came inside.
When you stand at someone's door day or night and you're wearing a coat and tie and they haven't seen their family member sometime, then they generally know why you're there. It's very difficult.
I had high hopes for Johnny. Everybody did. Son was a boxer, a great boxer. He was gonna go pro.
She and her son, Johnny, lived in the state of Nevada, and he started boxing when he was 15 years old, and he had a real talent.
She said by the time he reached the age of 18, he was a heavyweight Golden Gloves champion within the state of Nevada.
She explains that until Johnny Wilson could fight his way up to the more lucrative matches, he had to work as a bouncer to pay the bills.
And that's when it happened. It was just bad luck.
Get outside. Get out your face. Man, I ain't scared of you. Hey guys, chill out. Chill out. Chill out. That's what you do. That's what you get out of here.
During the course of breaking up a fight, he was shot in the chest. She said the bullet remained in the chest. The doctors didn't remove it.
That limited his breathing ability and his ability to stay in excellent shape.
He was forced to stop boxing. After that, he was just lost.
When you have a dream like that and you're on your way and it's taken away from you so suddenly at a young age, it's going to affect your life in ways that you can't even imagine.
He got on drugs. So we moved out here to Denver to get him away from all of that.
Did that work out?
Yeah, he was clean. But he was still just so down on himself until he ran into one of the boxing coaches from the USA boxing team.
Johnny Wilson. Yeah.
I knew it, man. How you
It's
doing?
me. I'm good. I'm good.
How are you? I will never forget your knockout at the Golden Gloves Championship, man.
Man, that was amazing.
It
That was a long
incredible.
time ago. It was
Yeah, man, it was incredible. It was alley shuffle. 1, 2,
Oh, wow.
bang, man.
Bam.
You hit him.
Bam.
Yeah, you training here in Denver?
No, I gave that up a while ago.
Johnny told that guy about his health, and he was convinced he could help my son.
The mother also said that he was told if he could overcome his breathing issues with the right kind of coaches, he could perhaps resume his career.
So he then moved himself down to Colorado Springs and began to train once again.
She said she was so happy that her son had found this new lease on life. But about a month ago, she started to sense that something was wrong.
What do you mean?
He was sounding really anxious on the phone. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong. I decided to find out myself.
Shonda drove down from Denver and finally found him. It was apparent that he was back on drugs.
It's got to be very sad and disheartening for a mother who had so much hope in her son to see him fall so quickly.
He looked terrible. I tried to get him to come home with me. He said he had something to take care of first. That was the last time I saw him.
Do you remember any of the people that he was with?
No, just some addicts, I think.
Why would she know? Her only concern was him.
Please, detective, you find the man that did this to my son.
I promise you we're gonna do the best we can.
Knowing that we have a person living off the street, the chance of solving this one are becoming slimmer every day.
But lucky for Gansel, Kenda has a new lead for him.
This is Gansel.
Hey, Steve, it's Kenda.
Hey.
I got information from this woman. It says
Her husband and another guy might be involved in the killing.
We got a Crime Stoppers tip from a woman, and she tells this long story about how her husband and another guy are probably the ones that are involved in the death of Johnny Wilson.
I'm telling you, Steve, she had a lot of
Information we haven't put out to the media yet.
So when you get a Crime Stoppers tip that says a certain thing about the remains or a certain thing about the method of death, you know that's good information because nobody knows that except the police. The point is, you have to understand that bad guys read the paper also. They watch the TV news, just like you do. We do not release all the information about a murder case to the media. It's not because we're trying to avoid anything. It's because we're trying to restrict information known only to the killer.
I think she might be the real deal.
I said, it just smells right, very right. And you need to get on this and bring in this woman, Lynn Chapman.
Miss Chapman, I'm Detective Gansel.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find someone to watch my girl on such short notice.
Mike, would you be so kind and keep an eye on her while we talk?
Okay.
Thanks so much. Please have a seat.
I'm not sure where to start with all this. This involves my husband, Reggie. He saw that Crime Stoppers report and just went berserk.
She explains that her and her husband were living in this motel due to financial difficulties. They were trying to get back on their feet.
Why they gotta be putting in the news?
Was that Johnny they were talking about?
How am I supposed to know?
Was that Johnny?
You need to mind the damn business.
She said he's extremely physically strong, sometimes doesn't know his own strength, in her words. At one point, she said he put his hands around her neck so forcefully that she thought he was going to kill her, and she decided she needed to get away from him.
She went to her mother's house to seek safety. It was apparent that Lynn Chapman was in fear of her life.
All right, let's back up a minute. Why would you ask your husband if the victim on the news was Johnny?
Because I think I was there when my husband killed him.
Well, do tell Lynn, we've been hoping for someone like you to show up. We have an amateur boxer, Johnny Wilson, who has fallen into the drug world, who winds up getting murdered.
I'm really sorry.
We've already had one informant who completely took back everything she said to us. Now we have another informant that sounds like a really good one.
We have somebody stating that her husband was in fact the one that committed the homicide.
She also says that because they've had these problems in her marriage, he choked her once and she thought she was going to die. Now that's an important statement, because what is he doing to her? Manual strangulation. What did somebody do to Johnny Wilson? The very same thing.
So now the investigation is becoming more and more focused.
So how does Reggie know Johnny?
We met him at the motel where we were living. Him and Johnny had similar bad habits.
Which are?
Drugs. Reggie and Johnny do coke together.
Then Chapman described Johnny as a low-end drug user, drug supplier. He was a known associate to Reggie as to be able to supply drugs to him.
I think my husband and one of his friends gave him some money to buy some because the night all this went down, I heard him shouting about it.
She describes that she and her daughter were in the back bedroom of this motel room.
Where's the money, Johnny? I told you, man, I don't have it. You're a liar. What you think, I'm stupid? You're dead to me.
Mommy, I'm scared. Honey, it's okay. There's nothing to be scared of.
Just be patient. I need my money now.
Keep it Lydia away, kitty. What the hell's going on?
Don't worry about it. Go back in the room.
Come on down, man. Go get your money, man.
Oh, I swear to God, Johnny.
What's wrong? I think they're playing a game, honey. Come on, let's go back to bed. I closed the door, but things just got worse.
She turned the TV in the room on to occupy her daughter, but she's still crying with all this disturbance going on.
After about an hour of what she describes it as some type of an altercation going on, it becomes quiet.
She opens the door and looks.
We just teaching him a lesson. He just passed out. We're gonna throw him out in the cold. Now go to bed.
She sees Johnny wrapped up in 2 blankets, and there's blood all over the carpet. She then sees Reggie and his friend putting Johnny in the trunk of a maroon 4-door car, and they drive off.
So who was the guy that was in the room with Reggie and Johnny?
Jerome.
Do you have a last name?
She doesn't know Jerome's last name. She thinks he might be in the Army or he was recently out of the Army. She doesn't really know that much about him.
So what about Reggie? Is he still at the motel?
I guess. I moved out after he got physical with me. We've been living at my mother's, but I'm really scared he's gonna come looking for me.
This story that she tells Genzel makes absolute perfect sense for what someone would do trapped in the circumstances in which she found herself. Her concern is her family. He makes her believable, in my opinion.
Look, I promise you we're gonna look into this, okay? Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us.
It was apparent that Lynn needed safety. We contacted the Colorado Department of Human Services. Arrangements were made to put Lynn into a safe house.
So they have a place to stay where no one knows where they are until they can get Reggie into custody and also identify and arrest Jerome.
With no time to spare, investigators head over to Reggie's last known address.
Let's go to the motel room for 2 reasons. We may not find Reggie, but we're certainly going to find bloody carpet. That's an important piece of evidence.
I understand you got a guest staying here by the name of Reggie Chapman?
We did. He checked out early this morning.
I'd like to see his room.
Yeah, all right, sure.
So the manager takes his master key. We open the door and we look in this room.
Much to our surprise, the carpet that was once in there had been removed.
No carpet of any kind. It's a bare floor. So where's the bloody carpet? Where's the carpet? Was there ever any carpet? Did she make that up?
When she opened the door with high expectation, you're looking at it and go, great, now what? Where did it go? It's just one more leg. You just have to keep going.
We took the carpet out this morning after Mr. Chapman moved out. Why? Unfortunately, a lot of these tenants trash the carpets. That's why we buy the really cheap ones. This one is pretty gross. We just took it out a few hours ago.
So where's the carpet now?
In the dumpster, I guess.
You've got to be kidding me.
We look in the dumpster, and it's empty.
I guess the trash man must have picked it up already.
So now, knowing that it was within such a short time frame, the odds of being able to find this carpet was still very high. Just had to find out which company picked it up, which dump it went to, and then go to that dump and find that carpet.
There's a transfer station not far from here. Our garbage usually ends up there before going to the county landfill, so I don't know if that helps.
I hope that's not a new suit you got on.
I looked at Gensel and I said, I think you're going dumpster diving.
Wasn't exactly on my agenda when I got dressed this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Are you going to find it? Maybe. Are you not going to find it? That's also maybe. But you have to try. You can't just throw up your hands and say, well, they threw it away. Let's go look.
Detective Steve Gansel and his team are faced with the unpleasant task of wading through a mountain of garbage.
Gentlemen, the motel manager was nice enough to give me a sample from one of the other rooms. This is what we're looking for. No sense in putting it off. Let's get to it.
I had no idea that there were that many tons of trash. So we started walking.
Being a homicide detective, everyone thinks it's very wonderful. Oh my God, you know, it's this really great mystery. You know, a lot of it's just nasty, dirty, foul-smelling, filthy work.
There were dead animals and sewage, everything you could think of. The day was getting warmer and the smell was so thick. It was horrendous.
To get to the bottom of something, you have to go looking in places you wouldn't spend any time in if you could avoid it.
There's no escape, not even for lunch.
It's got to be here somewhere.
You know, the life of a homicide detective is not glamorous. Sometimes you have to do nasty things to solve a crime.
But you're here for a reason. The reason is to find out who killed Johnny Wilson. That's the motivation.
After 5 hours of searching, a glimmer of hope finally appears.
Guys, over here.
We looked down, it's like, Eureka! So I said, it's gotta be our carpet. It just has to be.
That is a match.
Thank God. Can we go home now?
Help me get this to the lab.
We took it to our crime lab, and the blood samples that were found and the blood samples of Johnny Wilson that were recovered from the autopsy did match.
Gansel now has enough evidence for an arrest warrant, but at the moment, he only knows Jerome's first name, and Reggie Chapman is in the wind.
The next thing is now to find Reggie. He is the named assailant, the person that Lynn identifies as being involved in the assault of Johnny Wilson.
So in his search for Reggie, Gensel goes to Fort Carson. His former employee in the United States Army.
Come in. Sergeant Courtney, Sheriff's Office like to have a word with you.
I'm Detective Gansel.
Nice to meet you.
I learned the previous roommate to Reggie Chapman was Donald Coatney, and Coatney was asked to come down to the investigative division of the Army.
You understand you knew Reggie?
Yes, when I first met Private Chapman, I liked him. I say he had the respect of all his peers.
He describes that he started getting into cocaine. His attitude changed. He wouldn't take orders. He went AWOL.
Donald said that he had assaulted his wife and they sent him to the military jail on Fort Carson.
That led to a dishonorable discharge. I haven't seen him since.
He has no idea where he would be. He doesn't know any other friends he may have. And he never heard of anybody named Johnny Wilson.
We're also looking for someone he used to hang out a lot with, a guy named Jerome.
Jerome? Nah, no idea.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Reggie had a funny habit of calling people by their middle names, so maybe Jerome is like a middle name.
That's interesting. I'll look into that. Thank you.
No problem.
Dismissed.
Meanwhile, Kenda has continued to feed the press updates about the case, and his persistence finally pays off.
We get a Crime Stoppers tip that comes in, and I immediately get a hold of Gensel. We got another thing here that looks pretty good.
This guy claims one of the suspects is an ex-Army guy named Joey Brown.
Haven't heard that name, but Reggie was in the Army too.
Hey, by any chance, did your caller happen to mention
Middle name for this Joey Brown?
Jerome?
I got his address here if you want it.
Oh, yeah.
This could be the Jerome that we've been looking for. We went to where he lived and informed him that there had been a Crime Stopper tip that he was involved in the murder of Johnny Wilson.
No, man, you are wrong. I wouldn't even be involved in something like that.
Maybe you saw something but didn't participate?
No. I mean, I don't even know what Johnny Wilson is.
Joey stated he didn't have any involvement with him whatsoever.
But yeah, I'm sorry to say it, man. I gotta get out of here or I'm gonna be late for work. Is there anything else you need from me?
You mind if I take a picture of you? We'll help clear you through the investigation a lot faster.
Sure.
Thanks.
Cool.
The intent of taking a photograph was to show that then to Lynn Chapman.
While Gansel isn't sure Joey Jerome Brown is his guy, the color of Joey's car catches his attention.
Knowing that Lynn Chapman saw the body wrapped in blankets in a maroon four-door vehicle, now everything is starting to come together.
So now Gansel contacts his star witness, Lynn Chapman.
Do you recognize anyone in this photo?
I think that's him, but I'm not positive.
You're not positive?
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Without positive identification, the likelihood is yes, but likelihood doesn't fly in a court of law.
Thanks so much for coming in. Hang on a second. Is your daughter here at the station with you?
Yes.
Didn't you say that she was there the night that you saw it happen?
Yes, my 6-year-old Lenny was standing right next to me.
Suddenly, Gansel sees another way forward.
We asked Lynn, would you mind if we see if your daughter can recognize anyone to supplement what you said?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Great.
So we bring the daughter in, explain to her that these aren't bad guys, these are good guys. You don't want to traumatize a little kid. We asked, is anyone in this photograph the same person that you remember being with your dad?
That man there. He was the one with my dad yelling at the other man.
You're positive?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a child who supports what her mother has been saying all along, that her daddy and this fellow named Jerome were yelling and screaming at a man named Johnny. Well, they were doing more than that, darling. They were killing Johnny. This case has come a long way.
That man there.
Thank you.
Once that identification is made, it's time to sign an arrest warrant for Reginald Chapman and for Joey Jerome Brown for the crime of first-degree murder.
As El Paso County Sheriff's deputies head out to arrest Jerome, SWAT is assembling outside an address where Reggie is believed to be hiding.
A woman calls Crime Stoppers and says that she knows Reggie Chapman and that he confessed to her that he killed someone, and she knows where he is staying.
Knowing that we're dealing with an individual who is excessively violent, arrangements were made with the motel staff to know which room that he was in.
Let's get him.
Sheriff's Department! It's quite common when somebody opens the door and sees you, their first response is to close the door, as if that's somehow going to make you all go away.
Reacher up!
But what it makes happen is they crush the door.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Put your hands behind your back!
It's immediate surrender. And they took this guy into custody by showing overwhelming force.
Reggie Chapman immediately stated he wanted an attorney, didn't want to make a statement.
Meanwhile, across town, Jerome is about to have his own encounter with law enforcement.
Yeah, man. I'll be there soon. All right.
Joey Jerome Brown.
He was also arrested without incident and taken into custody.
But before they head back to the sheriff's office, something else catches their eye.
They notice his maroon car in the parking lot.
They look inside of the vehicle and see stain remover, some nylon cord, a 7-inch knife.
Forensics, major crimes, and a record of tow's car, please.
Ultimately, all this was taken into evidence.
With Reggie Chapman not talking, Gansel focuses on his alleged accomplice.
Joey Jerome Brown waived his right to remain silent and offered information to assist through the investigation.
I'll tell you the whole story. I don't care.
Let's hear it.
He comes forward and he says what happened. His theory is, I didn't kill him. Reggie did. That's his motivation.
This whole thing started because Johnny said he was going to pick up some coke. He wanted to know if we wanted him to pick up some for us as well. We scraped together $100.
And what happened?
We waited a few days, and Johnny never showed up with our stuff.
Jerome says they became extremely mad and felt that they were ripped off. After several days of Reggie and Jerome searching the streets for Johnny, they finally found him.
What's up, Johnny?
What's up, man?
What's going on, man? What's up, fellas?
Yo, you got my stuff?
Yeah, man. It's coming, man. Don't worry about it. My guy's just waiting for another shipment. That's all.
Anybody that buys drugs knows he's lying. They assume he used the money to buy drugs, which he's now got in his system.
You gonna get my stuff? Money, man. I'm not playing with you no more, man.
I ain't want no trouble.
Jerome explains that Reggie wanted to move their conversation inside, but tensions only escalated from there.
Come on, Reggie, take it easy. I'll get you your stuff, man.
Don't tell me to take it easy, punk.
Be patient, man. My guy always comes through, man. Come on. So we cool? Be patient. Just be patient.
I need my money now.
What are you doing, man?
Reggie starts knocking him around, making demands, threatening him. He's gonna kill him.
Man, I ain't got no money, man. Let me go, man.
Hey, yo,
ain't got no money.
check your shoes, man. Check your shoes.
It's a very common thing for street people to hide things in their shoes. I don't know why, but they do.
Yo, $31, that's all. That's all you got?
Jerome claims that's when Lynn came out and made the situation worse.
But that woman was crazy.
Nah, man, you just don't get it, man.
What the hell is going on in here? Just give Reggie his money. My kid's in there scared and can't sleep because of all this yelling and screaming. Just give him his money and get the hell out of here.
It's none of your business.
Not only did Johnny take money, but now he insulted Reggie's wife. That's the last straw. Johnny was a great boxer. Now he's just a dope addict. And he's a shadow of his former self, and he can't overcome Reggie.
All right, Reggie. Reggie, chill, man. Chill out, man. Reggie!
And he continues to strangle him until he goes limp.
The deed was done.
What did you do, man?
Get a blanket, man. We gotta get his ass out of here.
They wrap up Johnny, and they take him out and stuff him in the back of the maroon four-door.
They drive up to Woodmore, north of the city. In a remote area, they take the body out of the trunk, they dump him, and they cover him up with leaves and branches and whatever else they can find.
I really didn't think that Reggie was capable of doing something like that. I really didn't.
Jerome's choice to come forward turned out to work for him. He pled guilty to 1 count of first-degree assault and 1 count of accessory to crime, was sentenced to 4 years in prison.
Reggie Chapman is found guilty of second-degree murder.
And he received 8 years in prison for the crime.
The phone call comes on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day when nothing is supposed to happen, when the past is supposed to stay where it belongs. The retired detective almost ignores it. Unknown number, blocked caller ID, long tone in his ear. Then he answers, bored, half there, expecting a spam survey or a wrong number. Instead, he hears the sentence that rips 27 years wide open. This is the State Crime Lab. We have a confirmed DNA match on the Florida 1998 cold case. The profile points to Daniel Harlow. For a second, he thinks the line has glitched. A buzz, a low hum, a rush of air in his head. The lab tech repeats it, clinical, steady, oblivious to the way the world on the other end of the line just tilts. Coach Daniel Harlow. The name lands like a gunshot in an empty hallway. Not some drifter, not some faceless predator off the interstate, not a stranger in a rusted van. A coach, their coach. The man with the whistle, the clipboard, the smile. The man the whole town trusted with their kids. The detective walks to the kitchen window without really seeing it. The Florida sky outside is bright, calm, almost indecently blue. He presses the phone tighter to his ear, asks the questions he's trained to ask, even though his voice feels like it belongs to someone else. How strong is the match? What sample? What locus? Margin of error? The answers come back cold, precise, merciless. Complete match. No ambiguity. The DNA from a sliver of skin and sweat trapped in the lining of a teenage girl's shoe, logged back in 1998 and left to rot in a freezer, now lines up perfectly with a fresh sample collected after a routine DUI arrest last month. The name typed at the top of the lab report is not a mistake. He thanks the tech, ends the call, and just stands there. On the wall opposite the refrigerator is a corkboard he never took down after retirement. Old photos, old case notes, faded newspaper clippings. One of them is a missing poster, its edges yellowed, the ink turning a sad shade of blue-gray. A 17-year-old girl with long dark hair and a bright, slightly shy smile. Bold letters across the top. Missing. Emily Reyes. At the bottom, handwritten in red pen, his own note from years ago. No body, no witnesses, no closure. Now he might finally have a suspect. But no body, no witnesses, no closure. The cold case suddenly has heat again, but the heat is wrong. Sickly, like a fire starting in a locked attic. The detective pulls the pin from the old poster, holds it up, stares at Emily's face. He hears his own voice from decades earlier, young and sure, promising her mother they would find out what happened. He hears the TV anchors repeating the phrase until it turned into a curse. Florida 1998 cold case shocks community. To understand why this new DNA result feels like a betrayal, you have to go back to that night. Summer of 1998, the last home game of the season. Small coastal town, one main street, one high school, one stadium with peeling paint, but lights bright enough to make the ocean beyond it look like a black wall. Friday night, under the floodlights, the entire town stacked on metal bleachers, the air heavy with humidity, cheap cologne, butter from popcorn. On the field, the boys in blue uniforms sweat through their jerseys, shoes cutting into the dirt, every play echoing off the bleachers. On the sidelines, a stocky man in a polo shirt and cap paces like a general. Coach Daniel Harlow. He yells plays, claps loud, points, shouts encouragement and curses in the same breath. Parents love him. Kids fear him and worship him in equal measure. He keeps them off the streets, they say. He keeps them safe. Up in the cramped booth above the stands, squeezed between tangled cables and dusty speakers, Emily Reyes runs the soundboard. She was never built for the field. Too thoughtful, too quiet, better with wires and buttons than bats and drills. She'd taken the job for extra credit and a chance to be part of something. She loves the little feeling of power, her finger on the slider, her choice of song in the break, her voice in the headset saying, "We're live." Throughout the evening, she's seen in flashes. A friend remembers her leaning over the railing to wave. A teacher swears she saw Emily in the concession line, laughing with two other girls. The camera in the hallway catches a blur that could be her, arms full of equipment, slipping out of frame. On the tape, time stamps flicker in pale numbers. 8:57, 9:13, 9:27. Everything ordinary, routine, harmless. The game winds down. The home team is winning. The crowd is loud, happy, already thinking about late-night diners and after-game parties. At 9:31 p.m., Emily texts her mother. "Game almost done. Maybe 20 minutes. Love you." At 9:37 p.m., she sends a second message to a friend. "Meet you at the back lot?" No one answers that text in time. At 9:39 p.m., there's an outgoing call from her phone to her mother's number. It lasts 3 seconds. It never properly connects. Somewhere between the stadium lights and the dark edge of the parking lot, something interrupts it. The last clear image the world has of her comes from a grainy security camera mounted above a metal door by the back corridor. It's 9:40 p.m. The door pushes open. A young girl steps out, ponytail swinging, a light grey hoodie tied around her waist. She's holding a flip phone, the kind that snaps shut with a soft click. She doesn't look scared. She doesn't look suspicious. She looks like any other teenager stepping out for some air or to check if her ride has arrived. The camera catches her profile for half a second, then all you see is her back as she disappears into the dark toward the rear parking lot. She never comes back into frame. The crowd spills out of the main gates 15 minutes later, noisy, exhausted, satisfied. Parents herd kids toward minivans and pickups. Students shout across rows of cars, toss jackets, slam doors. Coaches and staff supervise, chat, lean against vehicles. Under the bright front lot lights, the night looks safe, familiar, almost festive. No one thinks much about the unlit stretch of asphalt behind the stadium, the one with a broken lamp and a chain-link fence that rattles when the wind blows from the ocean. Coach Harlow is impossible to miss. Big voice, big presence. He shakes hands, hugs his players, tells them, "Good hustle, proud of you. See you Monday." Half the town could swear later that they saw him stand by the front entrance until the last of the kids had left. That he was always surrounded by people. That he never slipped away into the shadows. Not once. At least that's what they remember. Memory is loyal until it isn't. At home, across town, Teresa Reyes waits for her daughter. She straightens the kitchen table, wipes down the counter, glances at the microwave clock every few minutes. 9:50. 10:05. 10:22. The windows rattle slightly with the distant rumble of cars leaving the school. She expects the phone to ring, the front door to open, keys to drop in the dish by the sink. It doesn't happen. Instead, the house grows quieter, heavier, each passing minute pressing down on her chest. At 10:30, she calls one of Emily's friends. "Is she with you? Did you guys go somewhere after the game?" On the other end, the girl sounds sleepy, confused. "No, Mom. She said she was going to meet someone at the back lot, but I didn't go. I thought she'd gone home with you." Teresa hangs up with a hand that won't stop trembling. By 11:15, she's in the car, keys digging into her palm, engine misfiring in her panic. The drive to the high school, usually 10 minutes, feels like a tunnel stretching forever. The stadium is dark now. Only a skeleton crew of custodians and security remains. The front parking lot is almost empty. She circles once, twice, scanning every car, every shadow, every corner where a 17-year-old might sit, texting, sulking, waiting. There is no sign of Emily. When she finally calls 911, it's just after 2 a.m. The recording of her voice will be played over and over in training sessions for new dispatchers, years later. She sounds controlled and broken at the same time. "My daughter is missing. She went to the game tonight and she hasn't come home. This isn't like her. Something is wrong. Please, please." The operator follows protocol. Age, description, last seen. What was she wearing? Does she have a boyfriend? Has she ever run away before? Words assemble into a checklist, but they don't add up to a safe explanation. The initial response is slow, reluctant, wrapped in false optimism. Teens stay out too late. Teens forget to call. Teens fight with their parents and crash on a friend's couch. "Give it a few hours," one officer says. "She'll probably walk in the door before morning." Morning comes. Emily doesn't. Somewhere in that gap, the story shifts from overprotective mom to missing juvenile. Patrol cars start doing slow sweeps of the streets. Officers knock on doors. Names get written down. The school is notified. The principal calls an emergency meeting. Then, mid-morning, a janitor cleaning the media room finds a phone on the floor beneath the soundboard. Screen cracked in a spiderweb pattern, casing scuffed, battery cover half off. He recognizes that the tiny sticker on the back, a cartoon character Emily liked. The phone is bagged, tagged, handed to an officer. Inside, the texts and call logs draw an invisible line straight toward the moment everything went silent. And yet the device is here, in the booth, while the last clear image shows her carrying it out into the dark. Someone had to bring it back. The question of who and when settles over the case like smoke. Search parties fan out through the surrounding woods and marshes. Volunteers in T-shirts wade through tall grass and sand spurs, calling her name until their throats are raw. Helicopters sweep the coastline. Divers check drainage canals. For days, the small town lives on caffeine, rumors, and fear. The local news puts her face on every broadcast. The words mysterious disappearance and shock community become part of the nightly vocabulary. And always, somewhere in the frame, there is Coach Harlow. He organizes student search teams. He hands out bottled water. He stands next to Teresa in front of cameras, massive hand resting lightly between her shaking shoulders. "These kids are my family," he tells a reporter, eyes wet, jaw clenched. "I won't rest until we find Emily." People nod, believing him. Why wouldn't they? He's the hero of every sports page headline in town. The evidence, such as it is fragile, scattered, incomplete. The broken phone. A few smudged partial prints on the back door handle. Some fibers on the hoodie left hanging in the booth. Investigators scrape under the handle of the rear exit, swab the railings, collect everything they can think to collect with the technology and training they have in 1998. The lab is slow. The concept of a national DNA database is still in its infancy. What they get back is frustratingly vague. A partial profile from a trace mixture, enough to know there was someone else's skin or sweat on Emily's belongings. Not enough to say who. Weeks crawl by. Tips dry up. The town dresses itself in yellow ribbons and then slowly, tiredly stops. The posters fade in the sun. Friends graduate, move away. Coaches come and go. Only two things really stay frozen from that era. The evidence in a dark freezer drawer at the state lab, and the ache in a mother's chest every time she passes the stadium. Years later, the detective retires, but he never quite lets go of this one file. Unsolved, cold case, no closure. It sits at the back of his mind like a locked room. He keeps hoping for a miracle, a confession, a random discovery in a construction site. Instead, what finally knocks on his door is colder, more clinical, and far more explosive than anything he imagined. A DNA match that points not to a stranger in the dark, but to the man the whole town had trusted most. The detective remembers the first time someone said it out loud. What if she's not coming back? It was 3 days after the disappearance, in the cramped conference room at the station, coffee smell mixing with sweat and cheap air freshener. A young officer, exhausted and raw, let the words slip, then immediately looked down as if the thought itself were a betrayal. Up until then, everyone had been talking about Emily like she was late, delayed, stuck somewhere. After that, the air changed. They were no longer just looking for a missing girl. They were looking for whatever was left of her. The town didn't want to hear that. In living rooms and diners, people clung to softer phrases. Maybe she ran off with a boy. Maybe she wanted to start over. Maybe she just needed a break. The word abduction tasted wrong. The word murder was unthinkable. You didn't say those things about your own streets, your own school, your own Friday nights. Evil belonged somewhere else. The city, the highway, the dark zones on the weather map, not the little patch of Florida where everybody knew everybody. But as days turned into weeks, the stories people told themselves started to crack. When you drove past the high school at dusk and saw the empty bleachers, the silent field, the broken light over the back lot that had never gotten fixed, you couldn't help feeling like there was a stain on the place, a cold patch of air you walked through and pretended not to notice. The investigation lumbered on, slow and messy. They built timelines, drew maps, highlighted routes from the stadium to the main road, to the beach, to the houses where kids might have gone to party. They pulled security footage from nearby gas stations and small shops, grainy clips of cars sliding through intersections. Unremarkable. Anonymous. They tracked down every registered sex offender in a 50-mile radius and asked where they were that night. They followed up on every tip, no matter how ridiculous. A psychic from 3 towns over claimed Emily was near water. A drifter in a bar bragged about knowing things and then sobered up and recanted everything. Someone reported a scream near the marsh at midnight. It turned out to be a fox. And always, in every meeting, in every whiteboard scrawled with names and arrows, one name sat in its own little circle: Coach Daniel Harlow. Not because anyone really believed he could do something like this, more because you had to put everyone on the board, had to at least pretend you were suspicious of everyone, even the town hero. They checked his schedule that night. Interviews with students, teachers, parents. People remembered him pacing the sidelines, yelling plays, slapping helmets. Remembered him leading the team in a victory huddle after the final whistle. Remembered him standing by the main exit, making sure no one got into fights. A bus driver swore he saw the coach under the front lights at 10 p.m., talking to a parent. A concession worker said she saw him behind the counter at 10:05, grabbing a soda, joking about the heat. Too many eyeballs put him in too many public spots for too much of the night. When the detective sat down across from him in a small interview room, the man who would later be at the center of that DNA match didn't look like a predator. He looked like a tired coach in a wrinkled polo shirt, eyes red from lack of sleep, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles went white. "I need to ask you where you were between 9:30 and 10:30 that night," the detective said. Standard opening, calm, neutral. "In plain sight," Harlow answered without hesitation. "Ask anyone. I was on the field. I was by the gate. I was walking up and down those damn bleachers. I don't disappear, detective. Not during a home game." "Did you see Emily at all?" His jaw tightened just a little. "I saw her up in the booth before the game. She waved. I waved back. After that." He spread his hands. "There were a lot of kids. A lot of faces. I wish I could tell you I saw something useful. I didn't." "Did she ever ask you for a ride? To stay late? To unlock anything?" "No." The answer came too quickly, maybe, but the detective chalked it up to nerves. "And even if she had, I would have said no. I don't give rides to students. Liability." "Anyone in the faculty seem a little too interested in her? Any student with an obsession? A grudge?" That brought something sharp into Harlow's eyes. "You're asking the wrong question. You should be wondering who at that game didn't want to be seen. The rest of us were on display. Whoever did this, if someone did this, they had to be smart enough to stay in the shadows. Smart enough to stay in the shadows." The phrase went into the detective's notebook. Later, when everything changed, he would circle it in red, over and over. The case might have stayed a murky swirl of interviews and dead ends forever if it hadn't been for what the kids found behind the stadium months later. By then, the nightly news had moved on. The posters were peeling. The search parties had thinned out. Only the Reyes family and a handful of stubborn volunteers still walked the ditches on weekends. It was late October when 3 students, bored and nervy, decided to go ghost hunting. They brought along an old camcorder one of them had found in a closet, the kind that took tiny tapes with a date stamp burned into the corner of the frame. They'd heard the rumors, the whispered lore that had already started to sprout. Emily's ghost in the back lot, a pale figure near the fence, a voice in the wind calling for help. None of them really believed it, but they believed in the idea of being the ones to prove something, anything, to a town that acted like nothing bad could ever really happen here. They stepped through the sagging gate at the far end of the lot, their sneakers crunching broken glass and gravel. The camera juddered as it tried to focus in the half-light. They joked, called her name, dared each other to walk to the darkest patch by the storage sheds. Then one of them tripped. He put his hand out, grabbed at the fence, and his fingers brushed something fabric half buried in the weeds. He yanked it free without thinking. A sneaker. White once, now stained, laces filthy, the rubber sole peeling away at the heel. Inside, something dark and stiff flaked away under his thumb. He stared at it too long before his brain supplied the word. Dried blood. The detective would later watch the tape they shot. The jittery image of the shoe lifted in front of the lens. The sudden silence as the laughter dropped away. The way one of the kids whispered, "Oh my God," like the phrase had never meant anything until that moment. The shoe matched Emily's make and model. Teresa recognized the way the laces had been double-knotted. Photographs from earlier that year showed her wearing that exact pair at a school fair. Lab tests confirmed that the crusted stain inside the heel was her blood. What no one expected was that along the torn seam near the back, there would be something else. A tiny, almost invisible shred of someone else's skin, trapped in the frayed stitching, and a partial, smudged fingerprint on the rubber at the very back. In 1990, that was a gold mine and a curse. The partial print went into AFIS and came back with nothing. No hits, no matches in the state database, the regional one, or the slowly growing national system. The DNA from the skin flake was even more frustrating. Back then, amplification techniques were limited. Mixtures were hard to interpret. The result was a profile with gaps, missing pieces like teeth knocked out of a comb. It was enough to prove that the blood and skin belonged to two different people, enough to say that someone else's hand had been on that shoe. It was not enough to say whose. The detective labeled the new evidence carefully, added it to the file, updated his board. His world narrowed down to two questions that echoed in his head as he drove home every night. Who handled that shoe? And where was Emily's body? Suspects came and went. A groundskeeper with a record for assault, a former student seen loitering near the stadium that night, an out-of-town vendor whose van couldn't be accounted for between certain hours. Each time, they got close to believing they'd found their man, only to watch alibis firm up, timelines click into place, tests come back negative. Every now and then, someone would glance back at the circle with Harlow written in it and say, "What about him?" The detective would go over the alibi again, the dozens of people who swore he was right there in the bright light of the field, the front lot, the gate, at all the critical times. The lack of any whisper of impropriety in his past. The way he'd thrown himself into the search. And each time the practical part of his brain said, "No, it doesn't fit." Years passed. Harlow's teams won more games. He got older, softer around the middle, his hair turning grey at the temples. He was photographed cutting ribbons at charity events, posing with scholarships recipients, hugging kids in graduation gowns. On anniversaries of Emily's disappearance, he stood quietly at the back of candlelight vigils, head bowed, like a man carrying a shared grief. If he was carrying something else, no one saw it, or no one wanted to. Inside the evidence freezer at the state lab, the shoe sat in a labeled box, sealed and forgotten. Technology outside that dark drawer raced forward. New methods, new databases, new ways to wring information out of microscopic traces. But no one called that box back to the surface. The case file was officially reclassified as cold 5 years after the disappearance. That word meant different things to different people. To the department, it meant no active leads, no dedicated manpower. To Teresa Reyes, it meant the world had decided her daughter was an unsolved riddle it could live with. Still, she refused to let the town forget. She went on local radio, on regional TV, on any platform that would have her. She repeated the same lines. Someone knows what happened. Someone is still out there. She kept Emily's room almost exactly as it had been the week before the game. On the mirror, yellowing around the edges, was a newspaper clipping with a headline that had once shocked everyone and now just looked like part of the wallpaper. Florida teen's mysterious disappearance stuns community. On the detective's corkboard, the missing poster never came down. It got buried under newer papers, yes, but he knew it was there. On especially bad days, he would pull the file, flip through the pages, the initial reports, the transcripts of interviews, the lab results with their frustrating, insufficient for conclusive identification, stamped in the margins. He would stare at the photo of the shoe, the torn seam, the idea of someone's hand squeezing it, twisting it, dragging its owner across asphalt, dirt, weeds. He retired before the answer came. Paperwork, a sheet cake in the break room, a gold-colored watch he'd never wear. He took a box of old case notes home against policy and stored it in his garage. Among those cases was Emily's. He told himself he did it out of respect. Really, he did it because he couldn't bear the idea of her file just disappearing into some warehouse. Then, in a different building, in a different city, a lab director signed off on a grant for a cold case DNA initiative. Funds to go back into the freezer, literally and figuratively, and drag old samples into the light of modern testing. A team of young analysts, who hadn't even been in middle school when Emily vanished, began pulling boxes, thawing vials, rerunning tests with equipment that didn't exist in 1998. Among those boxes was the one with the shoe, with the flake of skin, with the partial profile full of holes. The reanalysis produced something new. Where there had been gaps, now there were markers. Where there had been unknown mixture, now there was a clean individual profile. It slid into the national database like a key being inserted into a lock that had been waiting for it for decades. For a few weeks, nothing happened. Then a new profile entered the system from a completely unrelated case, a routine arrest, a blood draw, a sample taken, logged, uploaded. 2 lines of code met in a server somewhere. Alarms pinged. A technician looked up, read the match notification, and frowned at the name that appeared beside the long string of genetic markers. Coach Daniel A. Harlow. By the time that information reached the retired detective in his quiet kitchen, the town was still moving through its days like always. Kids racing down the same hallways Emily had walked. Games still played under those same lights. The back lot now better lit, the fence fixed, the broken lamp replaced. People had convinced themselves the past was a chapter, closed and shelved. What none of them knew yet, what the detective felt in the chill running down his spine as he held the phone to his ear, was that the chapter was about to be ripped open again, and that the face staring back at them from the center of all the new headlines would not be that of a stranger, but of a man they had cheered for, trusted and defended for nearly 3 decades. The news didn't break gently. Nothing this big ever does. It slams, detonates, tears through a town like heat lightning splitting open a night sky. It started with a whisper, one reporter at the county station catching wind of a development in the Reyes cold case after noticing unmarked cars parked near the state lab. Then a second whisper, an anonymous source hinting that the DNA match was explosive. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the headline had already mutated into a weapon. Florida 1998 cold case cracked. DNA twist points to beloved coach. Phones buzzed. Classroom doors opened. Teachers whispered in hallways. Parents stared at their screens while pouring cereal. Jaws slack. Students sprinted to one another between periods, holding up their phones with wide eyes and curses. The people who once lit candles at vigils now sat at kitchen tables asking the same stunned question. How could it be him? The detective, no longer officially a detective, but still thinking like one, drove straight to the station the moment he saw the headline. He didn't shave, didn't change clothes, didn't even finish reading the article. He just grabbed his keys and went. By the time he walked into the building, the place was boiling. Officers pacing, phones ringing non-stop, printouts scattered across the main desk. The chief looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You saw it," the chief muttered before the detective even spoke. "I did," the retired man answered. "How bad is it?" The chief exhaled, long and grim. "Depends on who you ask. Half the town wants to string him up already. The other half says the lab screwed up." "And you?" the detective asked. A pause, a heavy one. "I don't know what to believe yet." The detective understood. A DNA match was supposed to be final, the end of doubt, the smoking gun in a world full of half-truths. But this was different. This was a man known to everyone, a man with an alibi made of dozens of ordinary memories braided together like rope. Memories could be wrong. Rope could snap, or the rope could be real, and the DNA wrong. Everything suddenly felt unstable, shifting underfoot. "What's the lab saying?" he asked. "They'll brief us in person," the chief replied. 2 hours. The retired detective nodded, though every nerve in him screamed to move faster, to see the evidence himself, to demand answers from the very science that had just redrawn the story. Meanwhile, across town, Coach Daniel Harlow woke up to a fist pounding on his door. He had been awake for hours already, sitting in a kitchen lit only by the soft glow of the refrigerator light, staring at the half-melted ice in his water glass. He didn't know why he couldn't sleep. Maybe because lately he'd felt something closing in around him, a pressure he couldn't define. Maybe because the past never really stayed buried. Maybe because, in some corner of his mind, he'd been waiting for something like this, though he wouldn't have admitted that to anyone, not even himself. When he opened the door and saw the officers standing there, hands on belts, eyes hard, he didn't act surprised. That detail bothered many of them later. A man falsely accused might gape, swear, shout. Harlow merely blinked. "Daniel Harlow," head lead officer said. "You know who I am," he replied quietly. "We need you to come with us." "For what?" "For questioning. About the Reyes case?" A beat. Yes, he didn't resist. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Didn't even put on shoes at first. He walked into custody with the strange calm of someone sleepwalking through a nightmare. The station lobby was a storm. Cameras outside, angry voices, whispered judgments. As they led him through the back entrance, someone shouted, "Monster!" Someone else cried, "He's innocent!" A third yelled Emily's name. The wind carried it all in a single wave of chaos, and for the first time that morning, Harlow's composure faltered. His jaw tightened, his face went pale, his eyes flickered, not with guilt, but with something darker and harder to read, something like fear. The interrogation room smelled like disinfectant, stale coffee, and old secrets. The detective wasn't supposed to be in there. He wasn't on payroll, not assigned to the case, not officially anything. But no one stopped him. Not today. He sat across from the man he once believed incapable of harm, watching him like a stranger. Harlow clasped his hands on the table. His knuckles looked gnarled, older than the rest of him. The gloves of time had not been gentle. "I want to be very clear," he began before anyone questioned him. "I didn't hurt Emily. I didn't see her that night except before the game. I didn't go near the back lot." "You're aware of the DNA match," one of the young detectives said. Harlow's eyes flashed. "I was made aware of something, but the science must be wrong. It's a direct match." "No," Harlow said sharply, almost snapping. "I don't care what machine says what. I had nothing to do with her disappearance." The retired detective leaned forward. "Then explain how your DNA got on her shoe." "I don't know," Harlow whispered, voice trembling. "I wish I did. But I don't." "You coached her?" the younger officer asked. "She wasn't on any team." But you interacted with her? I interacted with every kid in that school, he shot back. I hugged them after games. I picked up their lost jackets. I grabbed equipment, bags, coolers. Thousands of touches, thousands of chances for transfer. Sweat gets everywhere. Skin cells get everywhere. You're suggesting secondary transfer, the chief detective said. Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. But the sample wasn't a trace. It was embedded in a torn seam. Then someone planted it, Harlow whispered. The room froze. Who would do that? The retired detective asked, tone neutral. I don't know, Harlow said again, quieter this time. But I didn't kill her. The retired detective studied him, his breathing, his eyes, the tremor in his fingers. He'd seen liars. He'd seen murderers. He'd also seen innocent men crushed under the weight of circumstantial hell. Harlow didn't fit neatly into any category, and that made him more dangerous or more tragic than anyone expected. While Harlow sat under interrogation, the town boiled. People gathered in parking lots, forming tight circles of speculation. Teachers cried in their cars. Former students posted long, panicked memories online. Alumni texted each other across states. Everyone seemed to have a story now. I always thought he was too intense. He once yelled at a kid. He was like a father to me. Stories that, depending on how you twisted them, sounded either damning or purely normal. In the middle of all this frenzy, one car rolled quietly into town. Teresa Reyes stepped out of it. Her face was gaunter than it had been in old photos, but her eyes were the same. The eyes of a mother who had carried 27 years of heavy silence. She didn't speak to reporters, didn't look at the cameras. She walked straight into the station, past the lobby chaos, past officers who recognized her instantly. When she saw the retired detective standing in the hallway, she stopped. For the first time in years, they were face to face. A mother and the man who once promised he'd find her daughter's truth. Is it him? She asked. He didn't answer. Couldn't. The truth wasn't clear. Not yet. Tell me, she insisted, voice trembling. Is it him? The detective swallowed. There's a match, he said. But matches don't tell stories. Not the whole story. Teresa closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, then opened them with a fire he hadn't seen since the early days of the search. Then find the rest of the story. 2 hours later, in a conference room filled with coffee cups and tension, the state lab experts finally arrived. The lead analyst, a woman with silver hair and a voice as steady as a metronome, laid out the timeline. The DNA found on Emily's shoe was reprocessed using modern amplification and isolation techniques unavailable in 1998. The old partial profile matched, perfectly and undeniably, to the newly entered sample from Harlow's DUI arrest. Margin of error? The chief asked. 0, the analyst replied. Possibility of contamination? We reviewed chain of custody. Everything checks out. Secondary transfer? The retired detective asked. Unlikely, she said. The sample wasn't on the surface of the shoe. It was inside the torn seam. That suggests direct contact. Murmurs rippled across the table. So you're saying he handled the shoe? One officer said. I'm saying his biological material was deposited in a location consistent with physical struggle or close contact, the analyst clarified. The retired detective felt something cold coil in his gut. Harlow's earlier words echoed. I didn't hurt her. Someone planted it. But who would plant DNA inside the seam of a shoe in 1998? No one even talked about DNA planting back then. It wasn't a concept in the public mind. Only career criminals or advanced labs could dream of it, and neither existed in this small town's orbit. Unless someone had help, unless someone knew something they weren't supposed to, unless the story everyone had believed for 27 years was wrong in ways none of them had imagined. What's next? The chief asked. The answer came like a hammer. We interview him again, the analyst said, and we reopen every inch of the 1998 timeline. Because if the DNA was right, and the data said it was, then either the beloved coach was hiding a monstrous secret, or someone else was hiding something even worse. They started by stripping the night bare, down to minutes, seconds, inches of asphalt. No more around then. No more, I think I saw. The cold case task force moved into a windowless room and papered the walls with photocopies of 1998, maps, statements, photographs, grainy stills blown up until the pixels were bigger than fingerprints. The retired detective stood at the back, arms crossed, watching younger men and women poke at ghosts he knew by name. On one wall was the stadium, on another the parking lots, front and back, lit and unlit. A red string traced Emily's last known path from the booth to the rear exit door. A second string, green, marked the places people remembered seeing Coach Harlow. At the start, it was a neat pattern, a reassuring loop constantly inside the halo of the front lights. But as the team re-interviewed witnesses and compared transcripts, little gaps began to appear. Inches of unaccounted space, minutes that went missing. Most people just remember impressions, one analyst said. Noise, color, feeling. They think they remember specifics, but they don't. So we look for what doesn't depend on memory, the retired detective replied. We look for whatever the night recorded. They went back to the tapes. The 1998 hallway camera, the one that saw Emily push through the metal door to the back lot at 9:40 p.m., flickered to life on a digital monitor. The footage had been converted and cleaned up as much as possible, but it still looked like a ghost story. A door, a blur of hair, a hand holding a phone, a sliver of face. Then she vanished into darkness. "Freeze it there," one of the younger detectives said. The tech paused the frame as Emily's hand touched the bar of the door. On the left edge of the screen, barely visible, was a sliver of movement, a shadow, a reflection, something that wasn't supposed to be there. "Enhance the left side," the retired detective said. They zoomed in. The pixels squared up. The image got uglier and more uncertain. But even in the distortion, you could make out a shape near the bottom left corner. Not a full person, just the hint of a shoulder, the suggestion of another body standing just out of frame, as if pressed back against the wall. "How did we miss that?" someone whispered. "Because we were all looking at the girl," the retired detective answered. The shadow could be anyone. A student? A staff member? A parent? The door itself could have warped the picture. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Emily wasn't alone in that hallway. They pulled every statement from anyone who claimed to be near that exit around that time. The list was short. A janitor who swore he passed through at 9:20. A security guard who walked the corridor at 9:50. No one put themselves at that doorway at 9:40. No one admitted to standing in the shadows. "Ask them again," the retired detective said. 27 years later, the janitor sat in front of a recorder with age spots on his hands and a tremor in his voice. "I told you," he said. "I finished mopping by 9:20. I didn't come back." "You never leaned against that wall?" the young detective pressed. "Never stopped by the door?" "I smoked outside on my break by the dumpster," he corrected tiredly. "If I'd seen her, I'd have said something then. I didn't." The security guard, long since retired to another state, was reached over video call. He was certain of only one thing. "I didn't see that girl. Not alive, not dead. If I had..." He broke off, shook his head. "I still hear her mother sometimes. On TV, on the radio, I didn't see a damn thing." The shadow remained. A smudge of doubt burned into the digital footage, pointing at nothing and no one. From there, the task force moved to Harlow's timeline. In 1998, it read like a solid chain. He was seen near the field at 9 o'clock, near the bench at 9:15, near the main gate at 9:45, under the front lights at 10 o'clock, in the hallway with the principal at 10:10, walking to the parking lot at 10:20. Put together, it looked airtight, but this time, the investigators didn't just collect statements, they dissected them. They asked not just where was he, but how do you know? When someone said, "I saw him at 9:45, They checked whether that time was on a clock or in a memory smudged by years and emotion. When someone said he was with me the whole time, they asked, "What's the longest you looked away?" Piece by piece, the green string on the wall loosened. The concession worker, a woman in her 40s then and her 60s now, sat under fluorescent lights and admitted, "I said 10:05, but I didn't look at the clock. I just remember it was after the game ended. Could have been 10. Could have been 10:15. The bus driver, once so sure he'd seen Harlow under the front lights at 10, frowned and rubbed his temples. "You understand?" He told the young detective. "I did that run dozens of times. Games blur together. I might be mixing nights. I thought it was that night because that's the one everybody talks about. But maybe it wasn't." The principal, now a retired administrator with a carefully neutral expression, stuck to her story that she spoke with Harlow in the hallway at 10:10 p.m. about a disciplinary issue. But when they pressed for details, what issue, what student, what exact words, her memory frayed. "I know we spoke," she insisted. "We always spoke after home games. But whether it was that one..." On the board, the grid of time showed a new reality. From roughly 9:36 to 9:47 p.m., there was no hard, verifiable sighting of Coach Harlow that could be pinned to an objective reference like a clock, a receipt, or a recording. 11 minutes, long enough to walk from the front of the stadium to the back hallway, long enough to follow a girl through a metal door, long enough for a struggle that left blood in a shoe. "An opportunity," one detective said. "An opening." Another agreed. "Not proof," the retired detective warned. But proof was what everyone wanted. They went back to the physical world, to the back lot, now covered in smooth, new asphalt and striped with fresh white paint. Kids parked their cars there every day without knowing they were rolling over the ghost of a crime scene. The task force brought in ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, even a geological survey team. Not because they expected to find a body under the parking lot. The soil had been dug up for drainage work 10 years after the disappearance, but because sometimes the earth remembered what people forgot. The radar showed old disturbances, trenches, pipes, a patch where something had been dug and refilled long ago. But no clear, clean outline of a grave. The dogs were restless but unfocused, tugging at leashes toward old trash buried deep. The earth kept its secrets. Near the fence where the kids had found the shoe, the investigators sifted through weeds and dirt with gloved hands. Most of what they found was the detritus of years, bottle caps, rusted nails, bits of plastic. Then one of them uncovered a strip of faded fabric, caught under a rock. It was blue once, dark blue. The kind of blue used on countless polo shirts at a school whose colors were exactly that. They bagged it, tagged it, sent it to the lab. Every thread was hope and danger tangled together. Days later, the report came back. The fiber was degraded, washed by rain, contaminated by soil and time. Yes, the weave and color were consistent with the type of shirts worn by staff that year. No, they could not say whose shirt it came from. The DNA present on the fabric was a messy mix of environmental noise. Too little, too late, the analyst said. In the court of public opinion, though, the words consistent with were enough. The narrative was simple and brutal. The DNA on her shoe, a blue fiber near where the shoe was found, a coach who couldn't account for 11 minutes. People strung those pieces together into a noose. Outside the grocery store, a former player was cornered by a local reporter. "Did he ever make you uncomfortable?" she asked, camera in his face. "He yelled a lot," the man said. "But he also helped me get a scholarship. I don't know what to think." Online, the verdicts were harsher. Anonymous accounts declared Harlow obviously guilty. Old rumors resurfaced, inflated. A scolding became, "He grabbed a kid." A post-game hug became, "He was too handsy." Every photo of him with an arm around a student's shoulders took on a sinister tint when reposted next to the headline. And then there were the whispers going the other way. "They're railroading him. Cops screwed up in '98, now they want a trophy. DNA can be faked, you know. You can buy kits online. Conspiracy slithered in through the cracks in people's trust. Some even turned their suspicion on Teresa. She just wants someone to blame, one cruel comment read. She's been waiting for a face to hate. Teresa didn't answer any of it. Instead, she went to the stadium. It was early evening, the sun slanting low over the bleachers. Practice was over, the new team coach locking up equipment. Banners fluttered from the fence, some old, some new. One of them bore Harlow's name, years of service, championships won, a thank you from the school. Teresa stood in front of it for a long time, eyes tracing the letters. Then, with slow, deliberate motion, she reached up, untied the first corner of the banner from the fence. The fabric sagged. The coach started toward her, hesitated when he saw her face. "Ma'am," he said softly, "maybe we should—" "This should have come down a long time ago," she said without looking at him. He didn't argue. He helped. Together, they folded the banner that thanked a man who might have killed her daughter and carried it to the principal's office. Back in the interrogation room, the questions got sharper. "Why did you leave the field around 9:30, Coach?" a detective asked. "I don't remember exactly," Harlow said. "Maybe to grab a drink, maybe to talk to a parent. Anyone see you?" "I was in public the whole night." "These 11 minutes," the detective pressed, tapping the timeline. "From 9:36 to 9:47. Can you account for them?" Harlow stared at the paper. "You're asking me to remember 11 minutes from almost 30 years ago. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday." "Did you go to the back hallway?" "No." "Did you go out the rear door?" "No." "Did you see Emily at any point after 7 p.m.? "No." His answers were flat, repetitive, like a man holding on to one rope in a flood. The retired detective watched him. "When did you first hear she was missing?" he asked quietly. Harlow blinked. "End of the night. People were murmuring. I thought it was a joke at first. A misunderstanding. Then I saw her mother." "And when did you first learn that the shoe was found?" "Months later. You told me." "Did you ever touch that shoe?" "No," Harlow said. "If I had, I'd have told you then." "Did you ever, in any way, have physical contact with Emily that you can remember? A handshake? A congratulations? Anything that could explain DNA on her belongings?" "She wasn't an athlete," he said, frustrated. "She stayed up in that booth. I barely knew her except as another kid's face in the hallway." The retired detective frowned. "That's not what some of the students say." "What do they say?" Harlow demanded. "That you once pulled her aside," the detective replied. "That you had a conversation with her a week before the game." Harlow's eyes flickered. There it was. A crack. "I talked to a lot of kids," he said. "About grades, about attendance, about behavior. They say you asked her if she'd be interested in joining the athletic media team officially," the detective went on. "That you told her she had good instincts, and that you noticed her work. Ring a bell?" Something like recognition flashed across his features. "Maybe," he admitted slowly. "If I did, it was nothing strange. Just encouragement. We were trying to build a better program, get more kids involved." "Did you touch her then? Maybe a pat on the shoulder, that's it. Was anyone else present?" He hesitated. "Assistant coach Lewis walked by. I remember because he joked about stealing all my good recruits for his own squad." Lewis. The name had been in the file from the start, side by side with a dozen others, never bolded, never circled. In 1998, he'd been young, ambitious, grateful to be working under Harlow. He'd backed up every part of the coach's alibi without blinking. They brought him in again. Age had carved lines around Lewis's eyes, but he still carried himself like someone who believed in straight backs and straight answers. At first, the interview was routine. "Where were you? What did you see?" Same as before. Then the young detective slid the old transcript across the table. "Back then, you told us you were with Coach Harlow almost the entire second half of the game, that you never saw him go near the back hallway. Do you stand by that?" Lewis read his own words in faded ink. His jaw clenched. "I told you what I believed was true," he said. "Believed?" The detective pounced. Lewis looked up, eyes darting to the retired detective standing in the corner. "We were busy," he said. "Plays, substitutions, parents talking to us. It's easy to think you were with someone the whole time, even if they stepped away for a minute. A minute? Or 5, I don't know. Could he have gone down that hallway without you noticing? Another pause, a longer one. Yes, Lewis said finally. He could have. The tape recorder hummed. In that tiny admission, 27 years of certainty shifted again. When Lewis walked out of the room, the retired detective stayed, alone with the quiet. He looked at the pictures on the wall, at the red string marking a 17-year-old's last steps, at the green string marking a coach's supposed presence among the living. At the intersection of those lines was a door and a blur and a shadow that refused to name itself. The DNA pointed one way, the missing body pointed nowhere, the town pointed fingers at each other, and somewhere between science and memory, the truth went on hiding, just past the edge of the frame. The arrest warrant was printed on crisp paper, black ink, simple language. It didn't look like something that could rearrange a town's entire sense of itself. But when the judge's signature hit the line at the bottom, the Florida 1998 cold case stopped being a ghost story and became a criminal charge with a name attached. 1 count of homicide, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of tampering with evidence. State for Daniel A. Harlow. They didn't put cuffs on him in front of cameras. The department knew better than that. He was brought in quietly from the holding cell where he'd already been waiting, wrists loose, shoulders squared. When the charge was read out, he didn't flinch. His jaw moved once, like he was grinding down on a stone. "You understand what you're being charged with," the detective said. "I understand what you're accusing me of," he answered. "Coach," the younger detective tried, dropping formality without meaning to. "The DNA. I know what the DNA says." Harlow snapped, the first real crack in his composure. "I also know I didn't kill that girl." The retired detective watched from the corner, the ghost at his own investigation. He'd spent his career believing that science was the anchor in a sea of unreliable witness memories. Fingerprints, blood, ballistic matches, DNA. Those were the things that didn't lie. But now science was the thing tying a noose around the neck of a man he could not quite picture in the act. "Your attorney will meet you at arraignment," the chief told Harlow. "I want to talk to her mother," Harlow said suddenly. Silence hit the room like a wall. "That's not happening," the chief replied. "Please." For the first time his voice went hoarse. "Just once. Just so she can look at me and decide if she really believes." "It's not up to us," the chief cut in. "And it's not the time. You'll be taken to county. That's all for now." They led him away. The door closed. On the other side of that door, the town split itself into camps, each one convinced they knew the truth simply because they needed a truth. Any truth. At the arraignment, the courtroom overflowed. Reporters were crammed onto benches like spectators at a bad play. Former students stood in the back, some with arms folded, some with tears in their eyes. Teresa sat in the front row, hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned bone white. When they brought him in, shackled this time, whispers rippled through the room. Without the whistle, the cap, the stadium lights. He looked smaller, older. Just a man in a wrinkled county jumpsuit, chin up, eyes fixed straight ahead on a spot somewhere above the judge's head. "The state of Florida versus Daniel Arthur Harlow," the clerk read. "Not guilty," Harlow said, before his lawyer could even touch his arm. Teresa exhaled so sharply people 2 rows back felt it. The prosecutor stood. Young, sharp, already rehearsed for the cameras, even if she pretended not to be. "Your Honor, the state will be seeking to hold the defendant without bond. This is a homicide case with strong forensic evidence indicating his direct involvement in the disappearance and likely death of a minor. He represents an ongoing danger to the community." The defense attorney, older, measured, the kind of man who'd seen too many lives chewed up by headlines, rose in turn. "Your Honor, my client has lived and worked in this community for over 30 years. He has no prior record of violence. He has cooperated fully with investigators. The so-called strong forensic evidence is a single DNA match on a shoe found months after the alleged crime, in a location exposed to countless sources of contamination. We will argue vigorously that this is grossly insufficient to prove guilt. The judge listened, impassive, eyes flicking between pages. He knew the cameras were there. He also knew a girl had gone missing and never come home. In light of the seriousness of the charges, he said, and the passage of time since the alleged offense, the court will set a high bond and impose conditions to ensure public safety. Bail is set at $1 million. If posted, the defendant is to surrender his passport and remain under house arrest with electronic monitoring. No contact with any witnesses, especially the Reyes family. A low murmur rolled across the room. For Harlow, who lived in a modest house on a coach's salary, $1 million might as well have been infinity. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. Harlow's eyes flickered, just once, toward Teresa. She did not look back. Outside, the headline sharpened. Coach denies role in teen's disappearance as court hears DNA evidence. The word denies sat there like an accusation. Back in the task force room, the work turned uglier. Legal or not, the moment charges were filed, the investigation entered a new phase. Everything had to be bulletproof. Every gap had to be plastered over, every doubt neutralized or accounted for. Juries didn't like question marks. They liked stories with clean arcs. Bad man does bad thing. Evidence proves it. Justice follows. This isn't clean, the retired detective said bluntly, pointing at the board. We have one piece of hard forensic evidence linking him physically. We have an opportunity window. We have a possible prior interaction with Emily. That's enough to go to trial. It might be enough to convict, but it's not enough for me to sleep at night. One of the younger investigators looked at him, more annoyed than impressed. With respect, you had 20 years to close this your way. Now we finally have something solid, and you're hesitating. I'm not hesitating, the old man answered. I'm asking the question that actually matters. Does this explain what happened? All of it, or just the part we can measure? He went back to the physical file like a priest flipping through scripture. The broken phone, the timing of the last text, the call that never connected, the shoe found months later, blood inside, skin in the seam, the shadow in the hallway, the missing body. Something bothered him about the phone. In every summary, it sat there as a simple fact. Found in the booth, under the soundboard, screen cracked. Everyone had treated it as either dropped by Emily in a hurry or returned there by the person who took her. But the details had never quite stopped whispering. He pulled the original evidence photos up on the screen, the phone at the angle it was discovered, the crack pattern, the scuff marks, the angle of the hinge. Then he called the lab. Humor an old man, he told the analyst. Walk me through the break pattern on that flip phone. She sounded amused and intrigued. The damage was consistent with the phone being dropped or struck against a hard surface while open, she said. We noted impact points on the outer casing and on the hinge. Why? Could it crack like that if it fell from, say, a table? Possibly, but the distribution of the fractures suggests force along the length, almost like someone stepped on it. Stepped on it, he repeated. Yes, but we couldn't say that definitively. Could you see if there were any microscopic residues from shoe sole patterns? She hesitated. With what we had back then? No. With what we have now? Maybe. But the sample's been stored for decades. I can check. He hung up and stared at the screen. The idea of someone stepping on the phone, the same someone who might have held the shoe, connected in a faint, ugly line. When the new lab report came back days later, it was brief but sharp. Traces of rubber compound consistent with athletic footwear. No full tread pattern, no matching set to a specific brand. Just enough to say, yes, someone likely crushed this phone with their foot. In 1998, that detail would have been a mere curiosity. In 2025, paired with the shoe and the DNA, it painted a more violent picture. A confrontation in that hallway or just beyond it. A call cut off mid-connection. A phone underfoot. They expanded the reanalysis. If they could pull more from the phone, maybe they could find someone else's DNA too. Maybe a fingerprint on the internal components. Maybe skin cells trapped where the casing snapped. The answer was both better and worse than they expected. On the inner hinge, under layers of grime and time, the lab recovered a second DNA profile. Not as strong as Harlow's on the shoe, but clear enough to meet database standards. It did not belong to Emily. It did not belong to Harlow. It did not belong to the janitor, the security guard, or any of the staff whose samples had been collected as elimination controls. It was male. It was unknown. A second person, the chief said slowly, reading the report. Or the actual attacker, the retired detective replied. What if it's contamination? One of the younger detectives protested. The phone could have passed through a dozen hands after it broke. Chain of custody shows it went from the student who found it to school admin to us. The old man countered. And we've already ruled those people out. This profile is from someone who touched that hinge before we bagged it. The hinge only breaks when the phone snaps. The phone likely snaps during the struggle. So whoever this is, he's close to the center of the storm. They ran the new DNA through every database they had access to. State felony offenders, national offenders, military, no matches. The anonymous ghost entered the system as male unknown contributor B. The prosecutors didn't like it. Juries get confused when you start talking about unknown contributors, one of them said. They start thinking maybe the unknown guy is the real villain and your defendant is just unlucky. Maybe that's not just what they think, the retired detective shot back. Maybe it's what happened. You still have Harlow's DNA in the shoe, the prosecutor replied. Whatever else we find, that doesn't vanish. The old man knew she was right. But the cold case had just gotten colder at its core. Another man in the room. Another set of hands. Another story unaccounted for. They dug into the yearbook archives, the staff rosters, volunteer lists, vendor contracts. Anyone who might have been close enough to Emily that night to touch her phone. Assistant coaches, visiting team staff, concession supply reps, temporary workers hired just for game nights. The list ballooned into triple digits. Half those people had moved away. Some were dead. Some had changed names. Some didn't want to talk. The assistant coach, Lewis, was back on the board too. Not because the DNA pointed to him. It didn't. But because his memories had bent just enough to let suspicion seep in. Back then, did you ever go up to the media booth? The retired detective asked him in their second meeting. Sure. Once or twice, Lewis said. To drop off track lists. To tell the kid running the sound to play a certain song after a win. It wasn't off limits. Did you know Emily personally? Only as the girl in charge of the music, Lewis replied. She did a good job. Did you ever talk to her alone? Not that I remember. Would you give a DNA sample voluntarily? Lewis stiffened. Do I need a lawyer? Everyone in that building that night is being re-cleared. The detective said. You can say no, but the ones who say yes move out of this room a lot faster. Sir. Lewis looked at him for a long time. I'll do it, he said finally. I've got nothing to hide. His sample came back clean. No match to the hinge, no match to the shoe. His circle on the board faded from red to grey again. The unknown male B stayed unknown. In living rooms all over town, people didn't talk about unknown male B. They talked about the man they knew, the coach on the news, the neighbor now wearing an ankle monitor if he ever managed to post bail. The picture was simpler that way. In one small house, a former player sat alone in the dark, his own memories marching back on him. He remembered being 14, small for his age, staying late after practice one evening while Harlow and Lewis argued about a play. He remembered slipping, twisting his ankle, dropping his backpack. He remembered Coach Harlow's hand on his shoulder, steadying him, asking if he was okay. He remembered another hand, he couldn't even say whose, grabbing the backpack, setting it on the bench. Sweat. Contact. It had all felt normal. Now he wondered how many microscopic pieces of people the coach had carried home over the years. Sweat from 100 kids on his whistle, his cap, his clipboard. Skin cells traded back and forth on equipment. DNA, the invisible dust coating everything. He didn't call the police. What would he say? That his coach once helped him up and now he didn't know how to feel about it? Back at her kitchen table, Teresa stared at the new reports the retired detective had, against policy, brought to her. The new unknown profile. The stepped-on phone. The second set of hands, etched into a hinge that had spent decades in the dark. What does it mean? She asked. It means there was at least one other man close to Emily and her phone when it broke, he said quietly. Does it clear him? She whispered, meaning Harlow. No. It's him. She set the papers down. I don't care about complications. She said, I care about the truth. If he did this, I want to see him punished before I die. If he didn't, then someone else has been walking free all this time. I need to know which nightmare I'm living in. The retired detective looked at her, feeling the weight of every year he had failed to bring her an answer. So do I, he said. Outside, the stadium lights clicked on for another practice, another season, another team that knew the story of Emily Reyes only as a cautionary legend. Don't walk to your car alone. Don't go out the back. Don't trust shadows. In the task force room, the board glowed under harsh fluorescence. Red string, green string, a blurry shape in a doorway. A shoe with someone's DNA in its seam. A phone with another man's DNA in its hinge. A coach sitting in a cell, repeating that he didn't do it. A mother caught between wanting to believe the science and wanting to believe her own gut. The cold case was no longer cold. It burned now, white hot, in every headline and every whispered conversation. But the heat didn't melt the ice at its center. It only made the questions sharper. The town tried to go back to normal. That's what towns do when they're scared. They pretend the ground isn't moving under their feet. School buses still ran. The diner still poured coffee. The waves still hit the shore in the same slow rhythm. But there were new habits now. People lowered their voices when they said his name. Store clerks turned up the volume when the news came on. Parents checked the back parking lot lights with their own eyes before letting their kids stay late. The prosecutor's office moved like a machine, humming on deadlines and discovery. They built a narrative out of fragments, sharpening each piece of evidence into something they could point at in court. The DNA on the shoe became direct physical contact during a violent encounter. The window of unaccounted time became opportunity. The old encouragement speech in the hallway became grooming behavior. They didn't lie. They just arranged the truth in a line that led in only one direction. Across town, the defense worked in the opposite way. Their job was to turn straight lines into knots. They hired their own forensic experts, people who'd made careers poking holes in supposedly airtight science. They circled the words secondary transfer like a shield. They circled unknown male B like a weapon. In the middle, as always, was the retired detective. Officially, he had no part in strategy on either side. Unofficially, his phone never stopped ringing. The prosecutor wanted him to testify about the original investigation. The defense wanted to pick at his doubts, to show that even the cop who'd chased the case for decades wasn't certain. What do you believe? His sister asked one night over dinner, pushing her plate away untouched. Just you. Not the badge, not the reports. You. And he looked down at his hands, at the grooves worn into his fingers by years of pens and steering wheels and the edges of files. I believe someone took Emily from that hallway, and she never made it home, he said. I believe someone handled that shoe and crushed that phone. I believe the coach's DNA is where it doesn't belong. I believe there's another man's DNA where there shouldn't be, too. And I believe that every time I think I see the whole picture, something new appears in the corner. That's not an answer, she told him. It's the only honest one I have, he replied. The trial date crept closer. In the weeks leading up to it, old secrets began to leak, as they always do when lawyers start digging. Not about the coach, at first, but about the institution that had sheltered him. The school district's internal memos from the late 90s surfaced. Most were boring: budgets, bus schedules, maintenance requests. But one, buried deep, inched the narrative sideways. It was a brief note from a guidance counselor to the principal, dated 3 months before Emily vanished. Concern regarding student ER. It read, reports feeling watched in certain halls after hours, unwilling to name specific staff member, recommending further observation and follow-up conversation. There was no follow-up memo. In 1998, the counselor had explained that away as teenage anxiety. She was clever, introverted, sensitive, the woman told the task force now, her voice riddled with regret. Kids like that sometimes feel on edge. I asked her to be more specific, but she clammed up. I didn't push hard enough. Then everything happened, and the machine moved on. I thought about it 1,000 times over the years. I never wrote the second memo. I should have. Did you think she was talking about Harlow? The prosecutor asked. No, the counselor said. Honestly, I thought she meant another teacher, someone who had a reputation for lingering too long, you know? Comments that were borderline. Name, the prosecutor said. She hesitated, then gave it. A science teacher, now dead for over a decade, heart attack on a fishing trip. In his file, there were 2 informal notes about overly familiar behavior toward students. No formal reprimands. No paper trail beyond that. In the court of the living, a dead man was an easy suspect. He couldn't testify. He couldn't look a jury in the eye. He couldn't be tested against DNA samples. His family refused exhumation. The defense latched onto him anyway. Reasonable doubt. They murmured, tasting the phrase like sugar. Reasonable doubt with a staff member who's already got smoke around him. The retired detective read the memo and felt his stomach twist. He remembered that teacher. Tall, awkward, eager to talk about chemistry at any opportunity. He remembered thinking the man was odd, but harmless. But then, he'd thought that about other people who'd turned out to be anything but. Emily's own world, once painted as the spotless on missing posters, grew more complex too. Her old best friend, now living 2 states away, flew down to testify about context, about the girl behind the smile. She was excited about leaving, the friend said in a recorded interview played for the team. She wanted out of here. She'd been talking about recording sound for movies one day. You know, real films, not just school games. She said the booth was the only place she felt invisible and important at the same time. Did she ever talk about anyone making her uncomfortable? The young detective asked. Yeah, the friend sighed. There was this thing she said once, that someone liked standing too close when she was doing sound checks, that she could feel his breath when she was adjusting the mic. Did she say who? No, I asked. She just said, doesn't matter, I stay upstairs, he stays downstairs. Was it a student? A teacher? A coach? The friend shook her head. She didn't say. She just said she'd figured out where not to walk alone. The hallway, the door, the back lot. The retired detective felt the old guilt stir again. If they'd pushed harder back then, if they'd asked the right question, would Emily have given a name? Night after night, he found himself driving to the school like a man revisiting a crime he'd committed himself. He parked in the front lot, walked through the main gates, followed the route she'd taken 1,000 times. Up the stairs, along the hall, into the booth. The room had changed. New soundboard, new screens, fancier equipment. But the shape of it was the same. A glass window overlooking the field, a narrow door, cramped space where 1 or 2 kids could stand, shoulder to shoulder. He imagined Emily there, fingers on sliders, eyes flicking between the game and the levels. He imagined someone standing behind her, just a little too close, a shadow breathing down her neck, a comment to make her stiffen. Maybe she laughed it off. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she changed her route that night to avoid that person, only to walk straight into someone worse. On one visit, he wasn't alone. As he turned to leave the booth, he nearly collided with someone in the hallway. The man was in his 30s, school ID on a lanyard, arms full of gear. "Sorry," the man said, stepping back. Then recognition flickered. "Wait, are you—" "The Reyes detective." The retired man gave a tired half smile. "Used to be. Now I'm just a nuisance they can't get rid of." The younger man shifted his equipment. "I'm the current media coordinator," he said. "I've read everything about that case. Hard to work up here without feeling her, you know, like she's part of the walls." "You ever feel watched?" the old detective asked before he could stop himself. The coordinator laughed, then realized it wasn't a joke. His face sobered. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Tour. Stadium at night, empty halls. It gets in your head. But we have more cameras now. Better lighting. And, well, kids don't move around as freely anymore. Everything's supervised." The detective nodded, thanked him, left. Out in the back hallway, he stood in front of the same metal door from the tape. It had been repainted, the handle replaced, the old camera above it upgraded to a sleek digital eye. But when he touched the bar, he still felt a drop in the temperature of the air around him. He pushed it open, stepped into the back lot, and counted his steps. 10 to the edge of the building. 15 more to a blind spot by the dumpster. Another 20 to the place where the kids had found the shoe. All of it could be traversed in less than a minute. 11 minutes suddenly didn't feel like a sliver. It felt like an eternity. He imagined different versions of that night. Emily stepping out, phone pressed to her ear, trying to call her mother. A man stepping out behind her, phone in his pocket, face familiar enough not to scare her at first. Maybe he said he'd walk her to her ride. Maybe he said he needed help carrying something. Maybe he didn't say anything at all before his hand closed around her wrist. In one version, the man is Harlow, his big frame blocking the light. In another, it's the dead science teacher, tension in his shoulders. In a third, it's a face the town never bothered to remember. A vendor, a driver, a stranger who blended into the crowd. Each scene ends with the same things on the ground. A shoe, a phone, a smear of blood. The details between are still missing. As the trial approached, the retired detective was subpoenaed officially. The prosecutor needed him not just as a witness, but as a symbol. The cop who never gave up. The man who'd carried the case like a stone in his pocket for half his life. In prep sessions, they went over every question the defense might ask. "Why didn't you arrest Harlow in 1998? They would say. "Because we didn't have the evidence we have now," he would answer. "Did you ever suspect him then?" I looked at everyone. "Did you make mistakes?" "Of course. We were limited by the technology and the information available." He tried to keep his answers clean, tidy, like the prosecutor wanted. But each rehearsal felt like building a wall between what he knew and what he felt. On the last day before jury selection, he stopped by Teresa's house. She answered the door before he could knock twice, as if she'd been waiting on the other side. "They're going to ask you to point at him," she said without preamble, leading him into the kitchen. "They're going to ask you if you believe he did it. They'll ask if the evidence supports the charges," he corrected gently. "And what will you say?" she pressed. He leaned on the back of a chair, feeling suddenly much older than he was. "I'll say the evidence puts him there, in that moment, closer to her than anyone has been since 1998. I'll say it would be hard for that to be an accident." "That's not the same as saying he did it," she observed. "No," he admitted. "It's not. Teresa poured coffee, even though his hands were already jittery. "When Emily was little," she said, voice quiet. "She used to be scared of the dark in her closet. I would open the doors, show her there was nothing there, close them again, but she'd still cry when the lights went off. One night I finally understood. She wasn't afraid of what we could see. She was afraid of what we couldn't." He swallowed. "And now? Now I'm standing in front of a closet with the doors wide open," she said. "And there's something there. I just can't tell if it's a monster or a shadow." They sat in silence for a moment, the clock ticking loud between them. Then she looked up. "You're going to tell them what you think," she said. "I'm going to sit in that courtroom and listen, and at the end they'll either put him away or let him walk. All I want you to promise me is this. If the verdict comes back, and something still feels wrong to you, you don't stop." The retired detective met her eyes. For all his doubts, for all his fatigue, he understood that this was the only promise that mattered. "I haven't stopped in 27 years, he said. "A jury's not going to change that." Outside, the sky over the stadium glowed dull orange as the lights clicked off one by one. The town settled into a restless sleep, divided and waiting. Somewhere between the roar of the ocean and the buzz of street lights, the night held its breath. Tomorrow, 12 strangers would begin the process of deciding whether a beloved coach was a killer, whether a string of numbers on a lab report could outweigh decades of trust, whether a cold case finally had a culprit, or whether the real story was still hiding, just out of reach, in the dark between a shoe, a phone, and a door that never stopped opening in people's nightmares. Jury selection in a small town is like pulling teeth from a shared mouth. Everyone knows someone. Everyone has an opinion. Half the pool has been coached by him, or had kids coached by him, or been in Teresa's church, or helped search the marshes in '98. One woman bursts into tears the moment Harlow is led into the courtroom, sobbing. "He wrote my son's college recommendation." Another man folds his arms and says, "I can be fair," but his eyes never leave the defendant, cold and flat. The judge dismisses them, one after another, until the rows of potential jurors start to look less like a cross-section of the town and more like its outskirts. Transplants, recent arrivals, people whose connection to the case is second-hand at best. 12 finally make it into the box. No one is perfect. Some know the headlines. Some remember the old missing posters. But each swears, hand on Bible or on breath alone, that they can weigh the evidence and nothing else. When the openings begin, the prosecutor doesn't waste time. She steps into the center of the courtroom and draws a line in the air with her hand, as if underlining an invisible headline. "On a warm night in June 1998, she says, a 17-year-old girl walked out of her school's back door and disappeared. For 27 years, her family has lived with silence, with questions, with rumors. For 27 years, the man who took her walked among you, celebrated as a hero, a protector of your children. The evidence will show that man is the defendant, Coach Daniel A. Harlow." She paints the story in quick strokes. Emily in the booth, the last text to her mother, the grainy hallway footage, the shoe in the weeds, the phone under the console. Then she tightens the focus. You will hear from forensic experts who will tell you that the defendant's DNA was found deep inside the torn seam of Emily's shoe. Not on the surface, not where casual contact could explain it, embedded where only direct, forceful contact could put it. You will see that the only time this contact could have occurred is during the brief window when he was unaccounted for on the night she disappeared. No one in the jury box moves, but their eyes keep flicking to the table where Harlow sits. He doesn't look back. He stares at the wooden grain in front of him, jaw clenched, hands folded, as if focusing on staying inside his own skin. Then it's the defense's turn. Harlow's attorney rises slowly, buttoning his jacket, letting the pause stretch long enough for the prosecution's narrative to cool. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, what you just heard is a story. A powerful story. A story that this town has been aching for, because uncertainty hurts more than blame. But your job is not to reward the best story. Your job is to